what do I do with all these negative news articles and studies around the ketogenic diet? How can I tell if they're real or fake or even just clickbait headlines?
Yeah, and the reason we bring this up is because more and more news is being almost curated to us based on what we search for. So if you're on our channel, you've probably searched for keto a lot, and more news articles are probably being put in front of you about keto, whether they're positive or negative. Now, myself, I've seen a lot of negative articles about keto, and so I always start with try and keep an open mind and really understand what they're trying to say. So I'm looking at that article for what is the basis for the research of this, what is driving this headline. So I start with the science and see if I can backtrack to the actual scientific literature. I will do that. If I can't, one of my favorite resources, if an article comes out today, in a couple days, dietdoctor.com will have done like a background check on it and will have produced a blog article about it, usually 3 to 4 days later.
That's a great tip.
They will have an article. Yeah. So, and that'll be my site. I'll just be like, okay, I've got to wait. They probably have access to a lot of subscriptions to medical research, which can be very expensive.
Yeah, they have a whole team of writers.
Yeah. So I always will go there second. So when looking at it, you always want to look at what is the sample size. Is it a human or an animal study? Because that really, if it's an animal study, take it with a huge grain of salt. Right?
Well, even if it's a human study, you have to look and see. So a lot of times human studies are self-reporting studies. And as imperfect human beings, we tend to misrepresent what we actually eat.
Right.
It's not even on purpose, even if we're trying to be very precise about it.
Yeah.
If it's later on and we're trying to document things, we underestimate serving sizes. It's just a human thing. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But that can skew study results. So unless they're in a controlled environment where all their food is being created and served and they're not allowed to leave, that's really the only way to do a human study that's completely accurate.
Yeah, and a lot of a well-done study will be just like that, right? They will provide all of their data. A lot of studies won't provide their data, and that leads people to be suspicious. But a well-done ketogenic study would have all of the food provided, all of the data provided afterwards, and then I just recently heard one where they took the feedback from other people, their peers in their field, and they responded to the criticism. And so they answered to the criticism of their own studies, which to me is very, very powerful. Like, okay, you have an answer or a reason, and this was like how they were measuring calorie burn, and like they're using like some really expensive type of water that allows you to tell in urine, and then they're like a chamber test. I was like, you're blowing my mind. I love this, but like those are well done studies. So what's the sample size? How long were they on a keto diet, right? A lot of the studies that are coming out are like, well, they were on a keto diet for 2 weeks. Well, big deal. Like, I don't care.
I saw one that was 5 days.
Yeah, you're not keto adapted at that point. So,
and look for clickbait. Look for obvious clickbait, because a lot of times I'll click on these articles and then I read through it, and the article literally says, oh, this might possibly be one thing, but probably actually not. I mean, and that's kind of how it's written. It's literally just trying to get you to click on the link.
Yeah, and then it's, does this particular site, like I've seen one site that's like, we've told you a number of times not to do the keto diet. Like, what is their bias? Like, why do they have such an axe to grind against one particular diet? Did somebody in their family die because of the keto diet? I don't, probably not. But, so, bias. I was just saying.
Way out there, didn't you?
I know.
And then looking for causation versus correlation. So, the classic example being, in the summertime, temperatures rise, so does ice cream intake. So does murder rates. So does that mean that ice cream intake causes more murders?
No, I think it just means that when you murder somebody, you have a hankering for ice cream. It's the other way around. I don't know. Yeah, but it's ridiculous, right?
But yeah, I mean, but the correlation being, okay, well, we noticed this and this. The study probably said more research is needed. This is a possible trend that we need to investigate further.
Yeah.
So if you go back to high school or college, the last time you took science, right? We form a hypothesis, a whole scientific study. We form a hypothesis, and then we test to see if that hypothesis is true or false. Then we find some data, we get data, and maybe there is an interesting correlation. And then the next step is you form a hypothesis and you do another study.
Yeah.
So it's a process. So generally one study done in a moment of time can't answer all the questions.
Right. And that's one of the reasons I'm going back to school. It's like I have developed this interest in how these studies are done and, you know, how the body works, and like I want to learn more.
Yeah.
And
so that's why Jeremy covers the science, because he's going back to school for biochemistry with the goal of being a researcher in the keto field.
Someday.
Eventually. Restarting at 40. He'll be 40 in July.
Yeah.